Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with episode number 62 in our incredible new tutorial series where you are unleashing the power of your Raspberry Pi Pico W. What I will need you to do is pour yourself a nice tall glass of ice cold coffee. That would be straight up black coffee, poured over ice, no sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. And as you're pouring your coffee, as always, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Sunfounder. Sunfounder is actually sponsoring this most excellent series of video lessons. And in this class, we will be using the Kepler kit for Raspberry Pi Pico W. Now, hopefully most of you guys already have your gear, but if you don't, look down in the description. There is a link over to Amazon. You can hop on over there and pick your kit up. And believe me, your life and my life are going to be a whole lot easier if we are working on identical hardware. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's jump in and talk about what I am going to teach you today. And what I'm going to teach you is I'm going to show you my solution to the homework assignment that I gave you in lesson number 61. But first, I must ask, were you successful? If you were successful, leave a comment down below. I am legend, double chest bump. And if you were not successful, leave a comment down below. I folded up like a cheap Walmart lawn chair. Also, on this homework, no cheating. I told you that for this assignment, you could not use the canned Python programs or the canned Python libraries of sorting and averaging. You had to write those functions yourself. So what was the homework assignment? Was to use functions in Micropython so that we are doing modular programming and create a program that would input a list of grades, would average those grades, would sort those grades from high to low, would find the high grade and the low grade, and then would print out all the information without using any of the canned MicroPython programs. Now, hopefully you guys were successful, at least on most of this. Let's say that if you got the inputting the grades and printing the grades, that would be like a C or a D. And if you were able to average the grades and print that, that would be maybe a B. If you were able to average the grades and find the high-low, that would be a B+. But if you wanted an A, you had to also sort. And of those different parts of the assignment, the sorting was probably the most difficult. But hopefully you guys were able to do that and were able to start becoming confident and competent in writing your own functions. Okay, well, let's just jump in and let's see if we can start writing some of this code. So I will need you to fire up your Thonny, and then I will need to get out of your way. And then we're just going to jump in and we're going to start writing this program. So let me get a little bit of Windows management going here. Give me just a second. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create our main while loop. So I'm going to say while true, when is true, true, true is always true. So we have created an infinite loop. The first thing, if we're going to input grades, is we need to know what? We need to know how many grades the user has. So I'm going to say num grades. We're going to get that from the user, and that's going to be, you would always have a round number. You would have 3, 4, 5, or 6 grades. You wouldn't have 6.5 grades. So we're going to make that an int. We're going to get it from the user. So we'll get input. We're going to give them a prompt. How many grades, like that, question mark, space, so that we get nice formatting, close the quote, close the input, close the int. So now we should have the number of grades. Now we need to go get those grades from the user. So what I'm going to say is my grades is equal to the function input grades. What does input grades needs? It needs to know num grades. All right. What is our problem? We don't have a function called input grades. And so we need to go and we need to write that function, and that function needs to input the grades and then return that array to the main program, and it will go into this variable, which is my grades. Now, if I return an array, my grades then will be an array. So kind of with Python, you don't have to go in and declare that. Just if you send it an array, my grades will know to be an array. So what are we going to do here? We're going to come up and we need to write that first function. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say define input grades like that. And then what is it going to be? I'm just going to call it n. That's going to be the number of grades. So the variable numGrades is going to go into the variable n here. Now I need to create an array, grade array, and that's just going to be equal to an empty array. So now Micropython knows that grade array is an array. Now we're going to need to put some information in there. And so what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to create a prompt, but instead of just saying input your grade, input your grade, input your grade, I think the prompt would be a little bit better if you said input grade 1, input grade 2, input grade 3. So put a little bit of a counter, put a little bit of a counter into that prompt. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create the prompt. So I'm going to say the prompta is equal to the string please enter grade number, and then a space, close that, and then I want to add to that correction. That needs to be in the for loop because that prompt is going to change every time. So I'm going to tab that over. I'm going to create my for loop. So for I in range, I want to start at 0 and I want to go to n. And remember, it'll stop 1 before n, but that will be right because I'm starting at 0. So it's that crazy thing. Go back and look at when we talked about for loops and it'll make sense. But it's a little bit quirky how it does it, that it stops 1 before n, but that's correct if you start counting at 0. So it sort of shifts everything to the left by 1, if that makes sense. So now I'm going to create my prompt. And so I'm going to say, please enter grade number. Okay, and then I'm going to concatenate that with the string value of what? I. All right, like that. And then I'm going to add to that, I'm going to concatenate to that a blank space just to make the formatting a little bit better. Now, what is the problem I have? The first time through the loop, I is what? 0. So it's going to say input grade 0, which is the way computer thinks, but as people, we think grade 1. So I'm going to go ahead and add 1 to it just because it'll be a little bit more intuitive for the user. So now I have the prompt. Now I'm going to say grade, the individual grade, I'm going to go out and grab. So I'm going to say that is a float of the input of the prompt, like that. Now let's think about this a little bit. Why do I make grade a float? Because some teachers would give you a 97.5. You know, they'll actually calculate the floating point number. So we'll let you have in between grades as well. And then the input is going to be this prompt, and this prompt is going to change every time based on I. So that should get it into grade, but that is a singular individual grade. Now I've got to put the grade where? In the array. And how do I do that? I say grade array. And what am I going to do? I'm going to append to that empty array. I'm going to append to that empty array grade. So in most languages, you would do something like grade array of index 1, grade array of index 2. But with Python, you can't expand it like that. You have to append the grade to it. Now, you can index it to change it, but you can't build it by just, indexing it. You've got to build it by appending. And then once it's built, you can go in and manipulate the individual elements if you want. All right. Now that should give it to us. So what should we do now? We should return to the user or to the main program grade array that we just built. I think that is pretty good. Now let's go ahead, because really before we can test it, what we want to do is, so let's come back down here to the main program. So I've input the grades. Let's go ahead and print them out. So I am going to say, what I'm going to do down here, I want to print out those grades that I just entered. So here I'm going to say print grades. Okay, what is it going to need to print them? It's going to need my grades, the array that we just created, and it's going to need to know how many are in there, so it will be num grades. So I'm going to pass that to the function print grades. What's the problem? There's no function print grade, so I need to go and I need to create it. Now here, when I called the function, I set a variable equal to it. Why? Because I was returning data. If I'm just going to print, I'm not returning data. I'm just going to go up there and I'm going to print, and then I'm going to come back, but I'm not returning anything. So here I don't need to say something's equal to that. I just call the function, it runs up there and it does the print, if that makes sense. So let's come here now. Let's come here. And what we are going to do is we're going to come here and we are going to define now print grades. And then here I'm going to say I'm going to need mg, which is going to be my grades, the array. I pass that to it. And then ng for number of grades, right? So what's going to happen? My grades is going to go into mg and num grades is going to go into ng. And then what am I going to do there? I'm going to say I'm going to print your grades are colon space, close the quote, close the string and then close the print. And then I'm going to say for I in range, where do we start? We start at 0 and we go to ng. And then what am I going to print? I'm going to print what? My grade of, I index with an I. Now notice again, when we index an array, we use the square brackets, okay? Print is a call to a function, so that uses the parentheses. And now I'm going to put a blank space after that. After I print them all out outside the for loop, I'm just going to print a empty string like that. All right, let's go ahead and run this and just see if this thing is going to be okay. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to run it. How many grades? Let's say I want 4 and I want 60. Now look at that. You see it says, please enter grade 1. Well, grade 1 was a 60. Grade 2 was a 70. Grade 3 was an 80. And grade 4 was a 90. Like that. Boom. And then your grades are 60, 70, 80, 90. Good, like that. I wish that there was a blank space before it printed this, and so I'm going to go ahead and put that here and say print and just a blank line again. And that way this is sort of indexed with a little bit of space here. I think that would look better. I don't like how those are run up against each other like that. Okay, so we got the first thing done. Now what do we need to do? What do we need to do? What we need to do is average the grades. And so how would we do that? We're going to come here and we are going to say AV is equal to AV grades, like that. What is AV grades going to need? It's going to need my grades, which I input above, the array, and then it's going to need num grades, like that. Okay, now what is our problem? We don't have, that should be av grades. We don't have that. So let's come up here and let's define that. So I am going to define AV grades. And then what is it going to get? I'm going to say again mg and ng, the array, my grades, and the number num grades. So I'm going to define that. Okay. So now how do I do that? Well, how do you average grades? You add them all up and then you divide by the number of grades. So how do I add them all up? Well, I create a bucket, and that bucket initially is empty at 0, and then I step through the grades and I add them to what? The bucket. So I'm going to say my bucket is equal to 0, I empty the bucket, and then I'm going to say for I in range, where do I start? At 0. Where do I go to? NG, like that. And then what do I say? Bucket is equal to bucket plus stepping through the array. What array am I stepping through? MG. And now I've got to index it, I. Okay, and that I is this I here. So it'll go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 1 minus num grade, which then gets all the grades in there. All right, so that looks good. So now my bucket runneth over. My bucket is full. So now how do I get my AVG? It's very easy. My AVG is just equal to bucket, which is the sum, divided by NG, which is the number of grades. And then what do? I then return my AVG like that. Okay, so then I calculate it here, and then there is AV. Now, I could go in and do the printing up there, but that just printed the array. And here I'm going to do the print. And so I'm going to say print your class average is, close the quote, and then comma, what? AV, like that. All right. So now I'm going to print the list of grades, and then I'm going to print the average. So let's see if that works. So we're actually going to average this time. So let's say that I am going to have 4 grades. I need to put my cursor down here, 4 grades, and I want to kind of have the average of 95, so I'm going to go on both sides of 95. So then first grade, grade number 1 is 90, and then grade number 2 is 100. Those would average to 95. And then what I would say is third grade is 93, and then fourth grade would be 97, and those should average to 95, and boom, look at that. Your grades are 90, 100, 93, 97. Your class average is 95. That is working dandy. Notice how I'm doing the easy ones first. Okay, now what do we want? We want the high grade and the low grade. So how are we going to do that? What I'm going to say is I'm going to say high grade, comma, low grade. So I'm going to, in one function, get the high grade and low grade, and I'm going to return 2 values, the high grade and the low grade. So I'm going to say HGLG is equal to high, low, the function. What is it going to need? It's going to need my grades, and it's going to need num grades, like that. All right. Now I need a what? I need a high, low. I need a high, low. Yeah, I need a high, low. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to define high, low. What am I going to get? I'm going to get MG and NG. Again, I could call these anything I wanted. And now what do? Well, I've got to initialize. I want to step through the list, and I want to find the highest grade, and I want to step through the list and find the lowest grade. So I have to have a variable to hold high grade. So I'm going to call that HG. And because I want that to find the high grade, I'm going to set that to 0. And then low grade, I'm going to set that to 100, just because the high starts low and the low starts high. And that way I make sure that I find in the list what I'm looking for. So now what do I need to do? I need to step through that array again. So for I in range, we're going to go from 0 to NG. Okay, 0 to NG. And then this is going to be a for loop, so I put the colon there. Now, if I'm stepping through MG of 0, MG of 1, MG of 2, MG of 3, I'm comparing MG of that index to my present high grade and my present low grade. So let's do high grade first. If MG of I, my index, if that is greater than my present high grade, then what do I have? I have a new winner. I have a new high grade. And so now, in that case, HG would become MG of I. Why? Because MG of I has been found to be higher than the last time through what high grade was. All right. Now, similarly, I need to find the loser. So if mg of I is less than the previous loser, low grade, then what happens? We have a new loser. So LG now is equal to mg of I. Why? Because we have a new loser. Now what do? We need to return to the user, return to sender, what? HG and LG. And let's make sure we do those in the right order. Yeah, HG and LG is what we did. And so I have an HG and an LG, and I'm returning them. And I don't like this. I like to always use different variables, high G and low G, just to emphasize that these variables do not need to be the same name as these. HG will then go into high G, and LG will go into low G. Okay? Now what we can do is we can print your best grade is, and then close the quote, comma, what is it? High G, like that. Now print your worst grade is space, that, comma, low G, like that. Do you think that will work? Let's see. Let's run it. Okay. How many grades? Let's go 4 again, and let's say let's say 93, and then let's say 97, and then let's say 100, and then let's say 90, like that. And look at that, 93, 97, 190. Your class average is 95. Your best grade was 100, and your worst grade was 97. Now, why did I input these numbers a little different? Why didn't I go 90 to 100? Because what if the program like had an error and just always took the first grade as the high grade or the last grade as the low grade? So I didn't want to put the high and the low either first or last, because that allows you to shake your program a little bit better, making sure that you aren't just inadvertently having an error in there. So that is just pretty darn neat. Okay, where are we now? Where are we now? We are now at the dreaded sort program. So what do we have to do? We have to come in. And we have to write the sort program. And so let's go ahead and just sort of set that up. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here, and I am going to define. And what am I going to define? Sort. And then what am I going to get? I'm going to get my grade array and ng number of grades, okay? And then here I'm just going to put a pass just so I've got something there. And then down here, what I'm going to do is before I print them, I'm going to sort them, okay? So now my grades is going to be equal to sort of what? My grades, and then num grades, like that, okay? Yeah. So now when I print, I didn't put that in the right place, so we're going to cut it. And we want to, before we print grades, we want to sort the grades. So I am going to pass it my grades. It's going to put the my grades in order from the highest grade to the lowest grade. It's going to send it back into my grades, but this my grades is unsorted, and then it returns. Now my grades becomes sorted, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. So now I think what I need to do is we need to kind of do a little work on paper. Okay, we need to do a little work on paper. And let's see if I can come over here. And we need to kind of think through how we are going to do this. Okay, we need to think through how we are going to do this. All right. And let's see here. There it is. It always takes a few seconds, a few very painful seconds for the sketch pad to come up, and then sometimes it disappears, which causes even more panic, but I think we've got it here. Okay, so let's look at this thing. Let's just say I have an array of grades. And my pen is not working. Okay, now let's try it. Okay, let's say that I have an array of grades. Okay, and I'm going to put them in backwards order because that's kind of like the worst possible case. So let's say that I have 60, 70, 80, and 90, right? And then NG is the number of grades, all right? And then let's just call MG is the array. MG is the array variable, and NG is the number of grades. Okay, so now how would we do this? We need to step through this. We need to step through this item by item. I need to look at 60, which would be NG, or which would be MG of 0, and I need to compare it to MG of 1. So I need to compare this number to this number. So how would I do that? Well, I would say for, because I want to step through the whole list for I, my index, in range. So I want to step all the way through. So I want to go from 0 to NG. And what do I want to do? I want to compare NG of I to NG of I plus 1. Well, what is the problem? When I get down here, this would be NG of I, and NG of I plus 1 would be down here. I would be referencing a number that's not in the array. So I want to what? I want to stop 1 before NG, like that. All right, and that way I would come down to 80 and I would compare it to 90. But then 90, I'm not going to go to 90 because I don't want to step outside the range. So you need to stop 1 before 90. And that way, in the one before, the 80 will be compared to the 90. All right. Now, what do I want to do? I want to swap if this, I want to swap if this one is bigger than this one. If this one is bigger than this one, what am I going to want to do? I'm going to want to swap. So I'm going to say if MG of what? The next one, which is I plus 1, that's this one. If this one is greater than MG of this one, so that would be I, then what do I want to do? I want to swap. I want to swap this one for this one. So 70 is greater than 60, I would swap them. But if it was 60, if it was 70 and 60, then it's already in the right order. I wouldn't swap. Now, how would we do a swap? Okay, how would we do a swap? Now, what people typically do is they would say something that what would swap be? They would say something like, well, I want to make MG of I equal to MG of I plus 1, and then I will make MG of I plus 1 equal to MG of I. And then what did I think I'd do? What did I think that I would have done? I would have swapped those two. But it doesn't work that way, because if I say MG of I mg of I is equal to mg of I plus 1, then this one becomes 70. And then when I say mg of I plus 1, 70 is equal to mg of I, it moves the 70 back down, and I end up with 70 in both positions. And so that just simply won't work, because once you move the 70 to the 60, we lose the 60. And so how would we do this? How would we do this? This is wrong. The way we would do it is, the first thing is we've got to put the 60 off to the side so we don't overwrite it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put like temp is equal to mg of I. So what? 60 comes over to temp. 60 comes over to temp. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say mg of I now is equal to mg of I plus 1, like that. And so then the 70 comes into the 60. I've got the 70 here. Now I've got to put the 60 into the mg of I plus 1. So now mg of I plus 1 is equal to what? We want that 60. Where did we put 60? We put 60 in TMP. I'm sorry, I called that. I'll just call it TMP, like that. Does that make sense? Now, what have I done? I've taken the 70 and put it into the 60, and I put the 60 here. So I swapped those two. Okay. Then what do? I just continue to loop through. So let's see if we can code that much. Let's just see if we can code that much. All right, let's see if we can code that much, and then we'll come back and see that it doesn't quite do everything that we want, but at least we've made a lot of progress. So let's come over here, and what is that? This is the sort. Okay, we're going to do the sort. So the first thing that I am going to do is I'm going to say for I in range, and we want to go from where? From 0 to ng minus 1. Now, why ng minus 1? Because when I get to the last one and I try to compare it to the next one, I would jump past the end of the array. So I just want to go to the second to the last one and then compare it to the last one. All right? So now, what do I say? If mg of I is less than, let me see. I want to kind of look at my notes here. Okay. I'm going to do it the way I did it. If I'm going to say if the next one, mg of I plus 1, if that is greater than mg of I, then the first and the second are in the wrong order. So in that case, what do I want to do? I want to swap. Now, how do I do a swap? I'm going to say TMP is equal to mg of I. So I'm going to hold that in temp so I don't lose it. Mg of 1, that would be a disaster. Mg of I. Okay. Now what? Mg of I is going to be equal to mg of I plus 1, like that. Okay. And now I've got to go in and I've got to get mg of I plus 1. I've got to go in, I got to get that out of TMP. Now, I know I've gone kind of fast, but if it doesn't make sense, stop, draw it out. I think you'll see that this will work. So what have I just done? I've swapped mg of I plus 1 and mg of I. Okay, so I think that should work. And then what do I want to return? I want to return the sorted grades. Okay, so now I'm going to return mg. Now, what do you see? What is the problem? If I just go through the list one time, the 70 and the 60, that's not good. Where'd that go? There it is. The 70 and the 60 will trade places, and then the 60 and the 80 will trade places, and then the 60 and the 90 will trade places. So I will probably get that 60 all the way to the bottom of the list, but the 90 is not going to make it all the way to the top of the list, but at least it's going to move in the direction of being sorted. It's going to move in the direction of being sorted. So let's come back over here and let's try that. So I think this should just run, right? Because I sort the grades. I sort the grades right here, and then I print them. And so let's see, I'm going to put it in the worst possible order. So I'm going to say 4, and I want them to end up high to low. So the worst case would be let me enter them low to high. So I'm going to say 60, 70, 80, and 90. That's the worst possible order. And then let's see what happens. Well, what is the good news? The 60 got all the way down where it needed to be. The 90 moved in the right direction. But what do I need to do? I need to sort again. And if I sort again, the 90 is going to move up 1, and the 70 is going to come all the way down. So what do I need to do? I need to step through the sorting to where I could get the 90 all the way to the top. So what do I need? I need an outside for loop. So what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to tab all of these over. So I'm going to tab, 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 tab. Now I'm going to create an outside loop for J in range. Ah, man, I am not even on the right. Oh my goodness, that was a disaster. The disaster of it all. I was editing the wrong one. Okay, let's find the right one. Sort. Okay, so I'm going to create an outside for loop. So I'm going to tab everything over. Okay, now I will create an outside for loop for J in range. And where do I want to go? I want to go from 0. Same thing. I don't want to go past the end. And so I can say NG minus 1, like that, NG minus 1. And so now it's going to sort. And then it's going to sort, and it's going to sort, and it's going to sort. It's going to keep sorting until I've gone from the top to the bottom, and I've moved that 90 all the way to the top. And so now let's try this, okay? How many grades? We're going to say 4. We're going to put them in the worst possible order: 60, 70, 80, and 90, like that. Okay, and look, I have 90, 80, 70, 60. Boom, I've sorted them. Okay, but what I want you to see is, that the first time through the loop, the 60, right, when we did it before, the 60 went all the way to the bottom on the first time through. It went all the way to the bottom. So after one time through that inside for loop, the 60 is going to be in the right position. So we don't need to go all the way to the end the second time. So we can make this program run a lot faster. Instead of going to NG minus 1, we go to NG minus 1 minus J. Okay. So the first time through J is 0, so it's going to go all the way to the 70 and compare it to the 60. Okay, it's going to go all the way there. But the next time, I know the last one is right, so I can subtract J. And then the final time through, right, it's just going to compare those two grades because it knows that all those are right. So this makes things run a lot faster. And if you're doing a lot of sorting, doing it faster does matter. Now for the things we would do here, it doesn't really matter, but since this is kind of a classic problem, I want to show you this way. Now let's see if it still runs. Okay, so how many grades? Well, let's say 10 grades, okay? Let's say 10 grades. And I'm going to put them in the worst possible order. So I'm going to say 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, and 99, like that. Now let's see what happens. Boom, look at that. It goes 99, 98, 97 down to 90, and then the average is 94.5, best grade is 99, and the worst grade is 98. Man, I must have introduced an error up here. What did I do up here? Worst grade is 98. Now, wasn't this working before? So let's see. I messed up that high grade and low grade somehow. For I in range from 0 to NG, if MG of I is greater than HG, HG is equal to MG. If MG, did I have this in here all along? That looks so right, doesn't it? But that is wrong. And somehow it seemed to work even though that was wrong last time. Let's try it again. That's one of those insidious little errors. Let's go 11 grades this time, all right? So then we're going to go worst possible order: 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, and 100. Oops. 100. And we have your grades are 100, 99, 98, down to 90. Your average is 95, best grade is 90, and best grade is 100, worst grade is 90. Boom, we've got this thing done. Okay, guys, that is kind of a classic problem of how to sort grades. And so some of you guys, like I said, if you got all of it, you get an A+. If you did everything but the sort, you get a B+, and then a C and a D. Hopefully most of you were at least able to input the grades, and then hopefully most of you were able to print them out. But what your homework assignment is that for those of you who couldn't do this on your own, look at this, understand what I did, then put my program away, and then go out and write it now, showing that you can at least, after seeing me do it, that you understand it well enough that you can do it on your own without just coming up and copying me line for line. So put my program away, go out and do it on your own. Be sure to post your homework solutions to YouTube. When you do, don't post it as a short, just upload it as a normal video. Those shorts are hard to look at, and it's hard to read what's on your screen, and I can't pause it to see what you did. And so just upload it as a normal video. In the description of your video, link back to this video, and then in the comment down below, leave a link over to your homework assignment. Okay, guys, that is your homework. What I'm going to do next week is I'm going to take you to the next level of object-oriented programming, sort of from modular programming to object-oriented programming. So we're going to learn how to do Micropython classes and methods. And that's what I'm going to teach you next week. So we're going to spend a few more weeks really increasing our programming skill level. And then we'll go back and start incorporating more components and doing more circuits and doing things more with the hardware side of things. But what I like to do in this class is I like to work a little bit on the hardware, then learn some more software skills, then hardware skills, software skills. So you're building those two skill sets up in tandem. I hope you guys are having as much fun taking this class as I am making it. As always, I want to give a shout out to you guys who are standing with me on Patreon. It is your support and your encouragement that keeps these great lessons coming. Also, you can help me by leaving a thumbs up on this video. When you leave a comment down below, that helps me with the old YouTube juice, so this will be offered to more people. And most importantly, share this video with other people, because the world needs more people doing coding and fewer people sitting around watching silly cat videos. Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.